unique aspects and strengths to them. So FIRST has impacted so many people in over the years since it's been founded. You can see here on the screen with these stats that 2.6 times of people are more likely to sign up for an engineering career in their freshman year. We have over 75% of alumni are currently a STEM professional or studying a STEM major. And you can see here that in the workforce, lots of these alumni have the skills of communication, conflict resolution, time management, and problem solving, which are what employers really are looking for with these students, because these technical skills you can acquire on the job, but these soft skills are really important to build up and something that FIRST really does an amazing job at. For us, like girls in STEM out there, this also has a significant impact on girls in STEM. You can see on like that second part of the orange panel that about 50% of girls are more likely to go into a STEM career. With that being said, I would like to tell you why we feel that we can help you. If you want to start a FIRST team, we can help you a lot because we are a third-year veteran team. This does mean that we started out during COVID. We started out learning robotics when we were all remote. That's a huge challenge to overcome. But through that, we learned a lot of unique insight into team organization and team motivation that we can also help you establish yourself. We also won the Inspire Award 6 times over the past 3 years at both the interleague and state competition. And for those who don't know what the Inspire Award is, it's one of the most valued awards in the program because it helps you qualify to the next competition. And the reason this is because it's not focusing on just robot and being like the best robot. It's focusing on making sure that you're a well-rounded team generally. You're generally good at robot, you're good at outreach, and you're a good team in general. You're sustainable, and you're a passionate team. You value gracious professionalism of our team. So that's something that we would love to help building as well. Going more into the World Championship qualifications of our team. Last year, we competed at the 2022 World Championship in the Finalist Alliance. There's about 160 teams that goes to Worlds every year, which means that we're about in the top 20. So we would love to help you in terms of robot. And we've, again, 2023 World Championship, which is in April. So again, these experiences have taught us a lot about how to mentor a team and help them feel competitive in competing at the competition. So if you're looking for guidance, make sure to reach out to anyone in like the screen FTC 18225 t-shirt, and we'd be happy to help you. So this is our schedule for today. Right now we are in the kickoff, and then right after this, we're going to be handing it over to Kevin Ross here. And then right after that, we'll be, we have 2 speakers, Janice Zhang and Jerry Anderson. They're both city council members, and I'll share a little bit about them in a few moments. And then we're going to be going into our breakout room sessions. Each breakout room session will be running twice, so you can attend 2 out of the 3 breakout sessions. So let's learn a little bit more about our speakers. So our key speaker today is Kevin Ross. He's right here in the front, and he was actually the founding chairman of FIRST Washington Robotics, and he's currently the member of the FIRST Executive Advisory Board. I'll let him share a little bit more about his story. He started out like a design engineer at Microsoft, maybe like many of you here today, and when he was conducting a series of interviews, he kind of came to the realization that he wanted to ignite a spark for exploration in young people. And that led to this amazing program that we're participating in today. And in 2017, Kevin Ross was named the 2017 Microsoft Alumni Integral Fellow, which he definitely was well-deserved. We also have 2 city council members, like I mentioned before. Janice Zhang, she is one of the Bellevue City Council members and is also the director at the Port of Seattle. And then we also have Jerry Anderson, which is a member in the city of Redmond and is the Green Roads International CEO. If you'd like to read more about them, flyers in the front, you can also pull up your email and read about their bios there. So onto our breakout rooms, we have 3 really, really interesting breakout room sessions for you. Our first one is Introduction to Onshape, where you're going to be learning computer-aided design. On a really basic level, this is where you're building your robot on a more virtual level. And really critical to the design process. So today we're going to be teaching you how to build some custom parts, how to import them from vendors, and teaching you very basics of mechanical aspect of robotics. Our second breakout room is the introduction to computer vision. And even though computer vision isn't like a required part of FTC, it's really, really important and critical because it helps you gain extra points and it helps optimize your code. So today, we're going to be teaching you the concept behind computer vision algorithms and also get a little bit into the coding if you're interested in that as well. Our last breakout room is alumni success stories. So we did a panel of 6 alumni. They're all really, really amazing, inspiring alumni to share a little bit about their story. If you want to read their bios, again, it's on the flyer and the email, but we're really honored to have them share their stories. Just to repeat this, each of these breakout rooms are going to be running twice. The only thing that are changing is which alumni are going to. All right, with that being said, thank you so much for listening. Do we have any questions before we begin? Yeah. Yes, so this event is being live streamed onto our YouTube channel. So we'll send out the live stream link and the recordings afterwards, and we can also send out some slide decks. Yeah, thank you. All right, to invite Kevin Ross onto the stage.
I'm gonna try this mic, yours cuts out. How's that sound?
Yeah.
There we go. Good. So thank you all for coming out today to find out more about FIRST, and thank you for a wonderful introduction. So my name is Kevin Ross. I am the co-chair of the FIRST Executive Advisory Board. So I'm basically a volunteer executive with FIRST. And I've also been doing FIRST. This is my 24th year doing it in the state of Washington. So I have a very passionate background with this whole FIRST thing. And she alluded to earlier was one of the things when I was working at Microsoft, I was supposed to hire 10 people. And I did, I don't know, 400 interviews. I read thousands of resumes. And the thing that was missing from all of those resumes was everybody had gone to college. Everybody was very book smart. Very, very, very few of those people had ever done anything beyond what their classwork was. There were very few hobbyists. There were very few people who sort of had the ability to take on a project on their own in a passionate way. And that's what, so when I left Microsoft in 1996, one of my goals was do something about that. And so what I started to go around and I was doing demonstrations at schools because I'm a nerd. And so I was also president of the Seattle Robotics Society. And so I would go around to schools and do demonstrations and kids loved it. Oh boy, you walk into a room full of third graders and they would watch my presentation. They'd have a great time. And then right at the end of the thing, somebody would raise their hands and go, is it snack time yet? And then that ended the presentation, right? And so I was realizing after several years of this that it's easy to inspire students to go and see things, but that isn't actually enough because their memory it lasts about 15 minutes after that. What we really needed was a way for students to be involved in the building and make this into a longer term project. And so in 1999, a high school girl named Ashley Snodgrass, who was about this tall, think of a Harry Potter looking young woman, came and asked me to help with her high school robotics project. And it turns out to be FIRST. I'd never heard of it before. At the time, there was barely an internet running. And so there wasn't a whole lot of information available. But after that first year of myself and 3 other engineering mentors helping to guide a large group of students through the process of building a big project, it was very clear and very evident that this is the single most impactful thing that I had ever done in my career or in my life, actually. And so here it is, 24 years later, I'm still doing it. Why is it so impactful? Well, if you don't inspire, like I said earlier, inspiring students is really pretty easy. You show them some cool stuff, they're inspired for a little while, and then they move on to the next thing. The hard part about inspiring students is making sure that turns into aspiration. Inspiration is an external force. I can inspire you to do something. Aspiration is a self-driven force where I aspire to do something and I would like to do it myself and learn it myself. And the key to being to really changing students' lives is to help them with their aspirations. That takes time, it takes mentorship, and it takes a community of people. And that is what FIRST is. FIRST is a very large community of people who aspire to help students figure out what works for them. So what does that mean in the real world? So we're here talking FTC primarily with one of the best FTC teams in the country, and about half of what they do has nothing at all to do with robots, right? With the actual building of the robot, and so the amazing thing with the FIRST program is, yes, we do have robots, but we have a whole other, I guess, ethic or a whole nother ethos called gracious professionalism. And gracious professionalism means that you share what you know, and that provides students opportunities not only to build a robot, but also learn how to communicate, how to work with others, how to be members of a team, and how to be outstanding members of their community. And so you end up with teams doing things like these workshops, like we're going to see today. They're sharing their knowledge, trying to help other people get involved. And the amount of personal growth that the students get out of just assembling a project like this is really remarkable. It had nothing actually, well, I mean, they're going to show us the robots and stuff, but most of that work has nothing to do with robots. However, the planning and the execution of all of that as a team is something that is celebrated. So this whole FIRST program, I'll let you in on the dirty secret. The robot is just the shiny dangly thing that we hang out there. The really cool stuff happens when students become involved in a community that celebrates them for being smart, for working hard, and for being outstanding community members. The Inspire Award that this team has won, it has very little to do with the actual building of the robot, and it's almost entirely about things they've done in the community in terms of outreach, in terms of teamwork, and those sorts of things. So come for the robots. You're going to get other experiences that go along with it, and please cherish those because that's super important. This is a very, very large program. There are about 700,000 students this year, give or take. We don't know the exact number yet. There are about 200,000 volunteers working with 700,000 students, and that's a lot of people. And the cool thing is that FIRST people tend to glom onto each other. See this shirt here? I'm wearing the FIRST logo. It turns out that gets recognized. If I walk through the airport, people will point and go, "Hey, I did FTC, or I did FRC, or I did FLL," right? And people identify with this program very, very strongly, and it becomes part of a global community, and it's really cool to watch students at airports, especially, we're all flying to Houston in 2 weeks or 1 week. The number of people who are going to identify themselves to each other and sit down and chat with each other is really amazing because we all have this sort of common bond. Okay, so how am I doing so far? You want to know more about robots? All right, front row wants to know more about robots. So robots are really cool because It is a complicated problem. It's a fun game. And it allows you to learn about lots of stuff like building hardware, doing wiring and figuring out how the electronics work, and also software. At the same time, you have to come up with strategies on how your team is going to play the game. And then you go and you play the game and you go home and you go, oh man, that so didn't work. We need to fix it, right? And so then you learn about iterating your design. So you're going to play once and you figure out, well, that didn't work. Instead of making it do this, let's make it do this instead, right? And so you need to go back and figure that out. And so it's a fun way of having very targeted experience in building and designing something. The software, the things that you need to teach the robot how to drive itself. It's called autonomous. And so that's a really big part of this game. And I think they're having some breakout sessions about that later, about how the programming is done, how you use robot vision to achieve things. And this is a great introduction on how to do all of that stuff. Okay. Is this real world stuff? Well, actually, it turns out it is. We had an FRC student from Spokane who was on the FRC team. He helped build stuff. He helped program the robots and stuff. Not an academic guy. That's fine. So after college, he ended up in the oil fields in North Dakota, in the oil sands fields. And he was just working as general labor in an oil facility, and the big machine broke. I don't know what the big machine does, but they have one, and they don't. It's not a commercially available machine. It was custom built, and they couldn't figure out how to make the thing work. And the kid walked over, and the cabinets were open, and there's a thing called a C-Rio backplane, which is what we used on our robots. And the kid out of the blue says, "Hey, I know how to program those," and that's exactly what their company needed that day. And lo and behold, this guy went from a high school team. He's now the troubleshooter for all of this equipment that's all custom built, right? Because all of the stuff that he learned on his robot was actually commercially used equipment that and so those are the sorts of skills, the weird skills that you end up learning when you learn how to do the TensorFlow stuff, and which is a sort of a machine learning thing, or in the computer vision. This is all stuff that is actually used in the real world. So what else can I tell you about the robot? The robots are really cool. This is such a fun game, by the way. It's very intense. It's full of ups and downs. It's every bit a high school sport, except for you don't have to be like 6'8" to play the game, right? It's an intellectual game rather than a physical game. It's completely co-ed, boy, girl, doesn't matter. Some of our best teams are 50-50, right down the middle, doesn't matter. The other cool thing, parents. This is the only high school sport where every participant could turn pro, and it happens all the time. So if, yay, football team, I have nothing wrong with the football team or the basketball team or whatever, but like 0.003% of high school football players become professional football players, right? Even though they had hopes and dreams, it's kind of like buying lotto tickets sort of stuff at that point. However, every one of our students, there's a job for every student in first who graduates. There's an engineering job available, by the way, and it's been that way for years. So something to think about. There's also scholarships available. If you go to firstinspires.org/scholarships, I think there's like $80 or $90 million in scholarships available and the other cool thing is that there are lots of universities out there who know exactly what FIRST is. MIT, I think 13% of their student body, or the freshmen last year, were FIRST students, which when you look at the population of the world, that's a pretty astonishingly large number, right? So Yale, Princeton, WP, name the engineering school, they know exactly what FIRST is. So this is a great way for students to get a little bit of knowledge about whether engineering is going to be for them or not. Believe it or not, we've had lots of students come out of the first program going, I don't want to be an engineer. I tried it and I didn't like it. And that's okay too. I mean, this is one of those experiences that will help sort you, right? So this is like the great sorting hat. And so we've had students go off to become artists and business people. My favorite is a student that was going to Aviation High School, which is an aerospace magnet school in Seattle, decided she didn't want to be an engineer. And so she told me one day, I don't want to go into engineering. I said, well, what do you want to do? Art. So she went to art school. And her second quarter of art school, somebody walked in, the teacher walked in and dumped a bunch of stuff on the table, says, okay, you as a team build something out of this. And there was like an Arduino and some electronics and stuff. And she's going, I know what to do with that. Nobody else in the room had a clue, right? And so it turned out all of her experience in FIRST actually applied to her art project. Who would have known? But so use this experience to figure out what you're interested in, whether it's science and technology, whether it's managing people, whether it's communicating, whether it's just being a good user of technology. Because that's really the key to the future at the moment, is being somebody who can take technology and apply it to some real world thing. Doesn't necessarily mean you're all destined to be computer scientists or engineers or anything like that. But if you know how to play and talk technology, then you're going to be in a much better place. You will leave FIRST speaking fluent nerd, because it's a language all unto itself. Okay, so well, with that, I'm probably low on time. So who's got questions? Question? Yeah. 5 minutes. Okay. Do you have any questions about what any of this stuff is? Anybody know what the calendar for all this looks like? Did you know that we usually start in the fall? And we start in the fall with FIRST Lego League. That's the program for 9 to 14-year-olds. Things are built out of Legos. And also in the fall is the FIRST Tech Challenge. And that's when the contest that High Def works on usually begins. We find out what the game is in September. And then we play the game in the state of Washington. We play the game late November and December. Then in January through April, if you're in high school, and most high schools in the area do have FRC teams, we have another program called FRC, which is, they're much bigger robots, and that is played. We find out what the game is. The game is different every year, by the way, in all of these things. Brand new challenge. We find out the first weekend of January, and then the competitions happen in March. In fact, there's one today down in Auburn that I have to run off to here in just a few minutes. Does that make sense? And then the World Championships is in mid-April. It's the April 18th through the 23rd, so it's in a couple of weeks. So usually teams meet several times a week for a couple hours. Depends. Your team figures that out. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. It's a little. There are lots of different opportunities on every FTC team, on every FIRST team, for knowing how to do lots of different things. Somebody does the website. Somebody does the. They're obviously building and designing the robot. That's a lot of fun. There's a ton of other things that go into it. Fundraising. There's a little bit of team management. There's communications. There's figuring out how to do outreach. There's a lot of really cool different things that you can tackle. So if the robots aren't your thing, there are many, many ways for you to participate. Parents. Turns out that this is best done with parents acting as mentors. Mentors do not need to be robotics experts, it turns out. So, getting involved as an adult with a team is really pretty straightforward. And the technical stuff you'll learn with the kids. The rest of it is just sort of managing time and logistics and those sorts of things. So please consider getting involved with your team, with your students' team, at whatever level you can participate. If it's just bringing food, great, that's awesome. If you do have technical skills, that's awesome. If you just want to learn some technical skills, jump right in. So thank you all for listening. I very much appreciate it. And I'm going to give it back to our host.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for that amazing talk. We're going to be transitioning to our council member story now. Here we have Jerilee Anderson. Do you want to come up? She is a Redmond City Council member, and she's also the president, CEO of this nonprofit called Green Roads. And it's mainly a nonprofit to transform transportation into a greener future through education. And she's also one of the nation's 2021 top 20 under 40 young professionals in engineering. And yeah, do you want to?
How many people think Julie is going to be the next CEO? I didn't mean to embarrass you. So hi, my name is Jerilee. I am currently serving. How many folks here are from Redmond, Bellevue area? No Redmond people? Okay, nobody wanted to admit it. Great. I am your city council member here in Redmond, and I was invited. I also know Dr. Yinhai Wang, who I studied with his next door neighbor in the civil engineering program for the University of Washington. So hi, Yinhai. Nice to see you. And my background is very detailed. I found my way into politics in a different way than I found my calling for engineering. I will tell you a little bit about how I got into transportation. I originally started as a civil engineer working on structural design. How many people here want to be in civil engineering? You're all building robots today, right? Not very many. Oh, there's Janice. And she wore the same color as me too. That's awesome. So I got started in civil engineering because I wanted to build roller coasters. And it turns out that's a very niche industry. And in hindsight, I actually did end up building roller coasters because I started a company, which is very similar. It's a roller coaster of an adventure for the last 12 years as a nonprofit organization. So overall, I went to the Cal Poly San Luis Obispo to get my undergraduate degree. And then I ended up working for a little while in structural engineering. And the way I found my way into sustainable transportation was kind of a little bit of a winding path, but I ended up going into green building and took a test, which is called the LEED Accredited Professional Exam. How many people have heard of the LEED or green buildings? Okay, great. A couple of you folks. And we got into, I went up to get my LEED AP. I read the book cover to cover, took the exam, and I went back to work just 2 years out of school. And I went back to work and I told my boss, I said, I'm ready to do green building. And my boss said, well, steel is recycled and concrete has fly ash in it. And that's about the extent of what you can do in civil engineering. And I that didn't sit very well with me. So I ended up going back to graduate school. I came up to the Seattle area and went to the University of Washington. So got my master's degree and worked on sort of defining what sustainability would mean for the profession of civil engineering. And I feel like I got swindled a little bit into sticking around to do my PhD, which ended up giving me the opportunity to teach classes and really get into this idea of what sustainable transportation would look like or what sustainable civil engineering would look like. So here I am today. In the middle of my graduate degree, I had an opportunity to take a class with the Foster School of Business, and I got together with 3 other graduate students, a Navy construction battalion person, a gynecologist, and myself, put together a business plan for this little idea called Green Roads. And Green Roads is a rating system for building more sustainable design and construction projects for transportation. So that's bridges, highways, rails, trails, runways, you name it. if it moves vehicles or moves people or goods, then it will qualify for our program. So I got this crazy idea to start a company 3 days after the Foster School Business thought it was a good idea. And we started a nonprofit called Green Roads Foundation. We're now called the Sustainable Transport Council. You can follow us on Facebook and probably Twitter. We don't have TikTok yet, but also LinkedIn. So if you'd like to connect with me, you're welcome to do that. But overall, the thing that I wanted to share with you today, specifically because the topic of robotics and technology does have a huge impact on the entire engineering industry. There's so many ways that now robots are being used in construction. Does anybody have any ideas on how that might be? No volunteers? Yeah, go ahead. Can you say that a little louder? 3D printing, yes. So that's that in the building sector. That's one of the new and different ways to even construct a building. They have machines that will come in and also place like 3D printed blocks to make lower cost housing. Absolutely, that was a great idea. Anybody else? Yes.
They're using robots to like do stuff that humans can't. Like they're making an nanobot which can remove cancer cells from the body.
That's awesome. Where do you get cancer in civil engineering?
I don't know.
There's a lot of different places you can get cancer, unfortunately. So that's a great idea. And I think that there's safety issues is sort of the big thing that you're bringing up here. Health and safety in construction is huge. And maybe Janice can talk a little bit more about this too, because she's a big wig in construction as well. So that's a great idea. Robotics can be also used for things like flying over large construction sites to look at the layout of the land and make sure that the sites are safe, that there's no polluting happening, and all sorts of different conditions that can be mapped back to something like a GIS system. And it makes our lives easier as design engineers to understand how this technology can save time and money, right? Especially if you're in construction. The idea of saving time and money is that profit or that job that you have, and going forward into what you can do next to be a little bit more innovative or outcompete your competitors. So there's a couple other examples that I had written down here. One of them, building was one of them. Drones flying over is another, making sure that you can map the sites and those kinds of things. But I did want to also just leave you with a couple of big ideas. Is if you are in engineering, you have a really solid footing in understanding the world that not everybody does. So when it comes to politics, understanding and spending the time to learn about people and what people need and how they move and those choices that they make as they go through their daily lives. As an engineer, you're kind of behind the scenes with that and helping them make the decisions to essentially build, get back home to their families on time, go to work every day, and build a life that they're happy with. So thank you for being an engineer. Thank you for building robots and all those things. And Janice, I think if you're ready, I'm happy to take any questions too. I don't know if that's part of the game, Julia.
For Jerry. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Your organization doing the one that you are CEO of. You are in your profile mentioned some CEO of some company that you own. So what exactly?
Oh, okay. So I am Sustainable Transport Council is a nonprofit organization that has a rating system that ranks road projects on how sustainable they are. So we work with government agencies around the world to help them build more sustainable, safe, mobile, and less expensive projects that last a longer time. How did I start the company, or how do I? Oh, so we did a lot of research at the University of Washington. I guess I left that whole chunk out of so we commercialized out of the University of Washington into this nonprofit organization. So there's a publication called the Green Roads Rating System, which is available on our website. and you can download that. And it's essentially the recipe book for a more sustainable transportation project. And teams kind of come and use the program. There's a set of minimum requirements that any project needs to meet. And then you can pick and choose voluntary activities that earn points for higher levels of recognition and award. It's very similar to the LEED green building rating system, but not quite the same because, yep. That's right. Yep. So if green buildings, why not green roads? Right. That's it. That's a great question. Thank you. I saw a question from Yen Hai. He's going to pick on me. So important advice that I'd like to share. I think I mentioned a couple of them. I did write this down because Julia gave me a homework assignment. Professors are really good at giving homework assignments, so she's doomed. So a piece of advice I would take, and you asked me how I got into this. I don't know how I wouldn't have got into it. It's a really difficult question for me to I would say really difficult for me to conceptualize not being an engineer. I have a story that I will say there's a longer version of this, but I have a TED Talk where it talks about what happened when I thought I would be an engineer. I can think of 2 or 3 cases of it. One of them was when I walked across the Golden Gate Bridge, which is my very favorite bridge in the world, when I was 6 years old, and I got a T-shirt, and I thought it was amazing. And then the other was I was in a hurricane in my early years, and there was some water draining out of a wall, and out of this really tiny little hole, and my dad was downstairs just like sopping up, like patting the wall, sopping it up with water. And I was like, that's not working. I ran upstairs. This is when I was about 10 years old. I ran upstairs, I got a straw and came down and stuck it in the hole, and it started to pour right in a bucket. So problem solver at a young age. I didn't really know what engineering was, but there are very many of you who are kind of in that position now, want to solve the world's problems, even if it's just starting with something that makes your family's life easier on the day-to-day, or even your own life. Just kind of coming up with creative or innovative solutions is a really big piece of that. So I did pick up 3 takeaways that I would love to give you as things that you can take home. So engineers are some of the kindest people that I've met. But one of the things that I wanted to say is to use your time, talent, and energy to be kind to others. And the reason I say that is because you can, even when you're rich and famous, which I am not, it takes a lot of energy, and it wastes other people's time when you're mean to them. So that's like the opposite of doing things nice for others is just being mean, and you're using your energy in a way that doesn't advance society. So there's lots of ways that you can be kind to others. One of my favorite is just to give 3 compliments a day. It helps improve your way of life. It feels healthy, and it's a safe thing to do most of the time. The other couple things, one is failure is an opportunity for feedback and growth. In engineering, it depends if you're in government or in private sector, but failure is something that you should welcome as a challenge. You can learn a lot from failure, and taking an opportunity to understand that getting over that fear of failure, which is very common in engineering, is what really leads to innovation and change. And so celebrate both success and when you fail. It allows you to think of it as feedback and say what went wrong, and then move forward. And then lastly, your idea could be a world-changing contribution. It may not be you who sees it through the whole way, but you can definitely have great ideas that grow and change people and benefit and improve the quality of life for everyone. So just keeping that in mind. I thought this room was going to be full of young women engineers. I'm sure about half of you, which is great, more than the sector itself, are very good system thinkers. So if you start thinking about think outside the box or inside the box, wherever you are, you may have an idea that does really flip the mental model that changes something for the better for everyone. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again, Jerry, for that amazing talk. Yes.
I forgot I brought show and tell. So this is a quick story. So this is a piece of what's called pottycrete. Anybody have a guess of what's in it?
Rocks.
Rocks are in it, yeah.
Different types of rocks.
Different types of rocks. It's called pottycrete. Got another guess?
Like cement or something?
See those little white specks in there? What do you think those white specks are? Yeah. Not feces. They're toilets. So this is from a project up, Green Roads project up in the city of Bellingham was the first in the world that the Public Works the engineer at Public Works ended up partnering with the housing authority. It was tearing down a building, and they were able to crush up 80 tons of toilets and put them into concrete pavement. So this is just a really great example of using materials in a different way, especially when we start talking about sustainability. And this is still there. You can drive up to Bellingham and go and see it because this lasts forever. So it has the same strength and capacity. The only thing that they said is when you place it, that sometimes it's a little bit sharp. So they ground up the toilets and it's 20% potties. This specific one is called the everything and the kitchen sink mix. And if you want to see, you can see there, I'll pass it around here. You can see little specks of recycled glass, the toilets or porcelain, and also other rocks and the cement that goes around it. So I'll pass that around. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Thank you once again, Jerry. I like how you both have green outfits. Yeah. This is Janice Zan. She's also a city council member, except for Bellevue. She's been a part of the Bellevue City Council member since 2017. And her main priorities lie in addressing the increasing tension between livability and economic vitality. And she addresses this by ensuring that streets can serve a variety of users and find ways to make housing more affordable for all. She's also a licensed professional engineer and certified construction manager with over 27 years of experience. And she's also working at the Port of Seattle as an engineering director. So welcome, Janice.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here. And it's kind of interesting. We did not plan together to wear green. And yet I think sometimes engineers are very observant. And so we thought about each of us individually that it was Earth Month and decided to wear green. And I had some remarks, but actually I want to start with something Jerry said too. I think when we're engineers, we just have a really curious mind and we're always about trying to find solutions. And I have to say that I didn't necessarily realize that that's a different way of thinking than maybe sometimes the general population. So if you are somebody that asks a lot of questions, yes, you like solving problems, you're always wondering why something works a different way, that's a gift. And I really want to impart upon you, because I'm going to start with the words of advice first, to find your passion, your superpower, and lean into that, because ultimately, as you lean into a career and decide what you want to do, finding something that you're passionate about that actually embraces the fact that, if you like STEM and you're curious about solving problems, I have to say that that's not necessarily everybody's thinking. And so just lean into that, I think, is an important piece. And then staying true to yourself. I was thinking about when I was invited by Julia to talk about kind of my career path. I would say that I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I want to be an engineer or I want to be a politician. And yet I still remember the physics teacher from high school, Russ Moody. He came to the middle school. This was in the Federal Way School District. And he talked about his physics class and how much fun it is. And I was in middle school, minding my own business, wasn't really thinking about it. But I thought, this sounds like really fun. And it was a journey for me from a love of math into a love of science that then led me to, when I was at the University of Washington, pursuing a degree in civil engineering. And at that time, I would say that there were not very many women that were in the field. And yet, I think that we sometimes approach things a little bit differently at times, and having our voices was really important. And as we go along, I see more and more now girls and young women that are choosing the STEM fields, and I think it's quite transformational. One of the things that I've learned over the years is that, and especially as we've just ended Women's History Month, is actually how many women in STEM fields there's been over the years that we just don't hear about, because haven't been written into the history books. And the more that we learn about them, the more that we see that STEM is not a career that's only for a certain gender. And I think that really matters. And the reason I'm telling you this is when I first got my undergrad, I went to work for the Weyerhaeuser Company down in Federal Way, and I was in their research and development. And at that point, there were two of us that were interns, and then we became employees at the Weyerhaeuser Company. And in a group of probably 75 people, the only other women were the secretaries, they were called that at the time. All the rest were men. And we've come a long ways. So I tell that story because I think that one of the things that we want to continue to do is make sure that when we talk about STEM careers, that it's really for everybody. Anyone that has that curiosity mindset and wants to solve issues, so many different kinds of STEM careers, whether you're interested in engineering or the sciences, chemistry, physics. My daughter's actually going to come back and go to the University of Washington to get her PhD in chemistry. I have to say, being a civil engineer, I don't understand chemistry and biology, but she loves it, and I'm really glad for her. When I think about, too, how society looks at these fields and how we make sure that, especially for those parents in the room, how we make sure that we're encouraging not just our sons, but our daughters to consider pursuing the STEM fields is going to be really key. And because I would say that still our society doesn't always value that. I went back to grad school and got my structural engineering master's, and then I was in design for a number of years. Fell in love with bridges. So when Jerlee was talking about the Golden Gate Bridge, I was like, that idea about how teams come together to solve problems. So I'm really glad that you're part of this organization and robotics, because at the end of the day, none of the projects that we build, none of the discoveries that we make are done by a single person. Right? It's about how teams come together. You bounce ideas off of each other and you discover something new. Along the way, I also found that actually problem solving is not just something that applies to STEM. In fact, when I raised my hand and decided to run for office, what I came to realize is maybe more engineers, more STEM thinkers need to serve in office, because when we're writing policies that impact people and their lives that can last generations and decades, we want to have that thoughtful thinking about how the implementation is going to work as we're writing the policies. Because sometimes these policies that we adopt in government may be really well-intentioned, but then as soon as you try to implement it, you bump into all kinds of roadblocks where it doesn't work. So I would encourage you, if you have that engineering curiosity STEM mindset, don't just confine yourself to thinking that you might want to just be an engineer. Maybe you want to run for office, because that same level of curiosity and thinking is what we need in government today. I was in design for a number of years, and then I had an opportunity to work at the airport, overseeing a construction contract, putting in seismic braces down at SeaTac Airport. And I pivoted from structural design into construction management, because that field was one that what I saw was how teams really come together to say, how do we actually take a design and build it for an outcome, for something that we can operate that works in our society, was something that really fed my passion. And so ultimately, I've been in the construction management part of the field for more than 20 years. In January, I did get promoted to Director of Engineering for the Port of Seattle. So now I oversee design, construction management, survey, and safety. Those teams that come together to deliver is the most gratifying in terms of how we get things done. And I'm really blessed to be able to actually have both my day job for the Port of Seattle as well as the City Council in Bellevue. I'm starting my 6th year on the City Council. And I think that those same way of thinking about how we ask the 5 whys. So if we see an issue that we have that's not working, the 5 whys is really getting to what's the root cause of the issue that we're trying to solve. Because sometimes if we just put a Band-Aid on something, we're not really solving issues. And I found that these different roles have actually allowed me to implement and influence not just on the Bellevue City Council. I just came back from Washington, D.C., where I serve on the board of directors for the National League of Cities. And one of the most amazing things we're seeing now is that when Jerry talks about green roads and sustainability and climate change in our future, we're seeing those same things happening at the federal level. So the Inflation Reduction Act is one that the federal government is putting money on the table to incent the private sector to be able to accelerate building green products, looking at alternative ways to make concrete. I learned that as part of some of the work with the U.S. Department of Transportation, air mobility is the next thing. So it's similar to a helicopter where the air mobility AAM lifts up and then it travels. It can carry people or goods. Drones is another one that we're talking about at the federal level, and how we look at the policies associated with drones, so that if we're thinking about engineering and some of the things that we do that can be a little bit dangerous to do inspections, being able to use drones instead of putting a person in the manhole is a very important piece. So as you are in your robotics work, think about how the ideas and design you have can be used in many other areas. Because a lot of times what I've seen is these ideas that are innovative is really just transporting something that's already done in one industry and applying it to another. Robotics has been used by the military for many, many years, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and yet it's about how people think, oh, if I can use it for this, what about applying it over here? How do we make that slight adaptation and create that other market and field? And I think more and more, it's also about how the government and the private sector can come together to solve problems. So I'm going to make a plea that as you think about your career, also consider working for the government. I have loved working for the Port of Seattle and feeling like every day the work that I'm doing is making a difference for the region in terms of the kind of things that we're building, whether it's at the airport or on the maritime side or in economic development. I think about the work that we're doing in Bellevue to make people's lives better. Those are all things that every one of you can contribute to, whether you choose to work in government or you choose to work in the private sector. I think that, I will end with the biggest conversation we're having at the federal level is we do not have enough workers for all of the fields that we need work in, whether that's in healthcare, that's in construction, that's in, which I talked about healthcare already, whether that's in social services. So think about what you're passionate about. Talk to people about what those careers might be and pursue it. And I would say maybe just like me, if partway through your career you decide, hey, I thought I really liked the engineering aspect and design, but really this whole managing construction feeds more of my passion, jump over there. And if you never thought you'd run for office, right, you could be like me, 51 years old and deciding, oh, I think I want to run for office, right? You could do that too. So imagine the possibilities and lean in. Thanks. Happy to take any questions. Great question. I would say her question was, how do I balance my life? And I would say that I've come to call it a blend. So it's like a work-life blend. At any time, it might tip a little bit more to this side than that side. And yet, what I've been really blessed with is an amazing family structure. My husband is amazing, and he helps me to enable me to do what I do. And also the two jobs are very complementary. And what I mean by that is the Port of Seattle exists as part of an economic development in our region to make sure that we continue to be a thriving community. And the city of Bellevue also wants the same thing, because the way that we are able to provide the services to the community is by making sure that we continue to grow as a city and that our economy is strong. And so I have found that I've been really blessed that both roles have really been complementary. And I think it's also knowing when you need to take a pause. In fact, it's in my other bag. I actually carry a couple of rocks with me. It's kind of weird. But my husband and I, we love to go collect rocks on the beach. And we have a little rock tumbler at home. And I find for my own kind of self-care and just kind of getting back into calm sometimes amongst some things that could be chaotic, I actually just bring out my rocks and they're almost like my own personal fidget spinner. Other questions? Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, you know what? I did not speak about that, but I will. So the engineering department has 145 people that report to me. And every summer, we hire about 15 college interns. We have also at times hired some high school interns as well. And part of that is we want to be able to create an opportunity to learn what it's like to work for a port authority and get real life experience. And in addition to that, we have a number of interns that started at the port that are now construction managers and design managers. So super proud of that, because ultimately we need to feed the pipeline and we need to actually give people a chance to test it out and see if engineering and these kinds of fields are for you, or you might go, oh my gosh, this is the craziest idea. I don't really like this, or I really like that. So thank you for that. I believe that we have already closed our posting for this year, but if you have an interest in the Port of Seattle or City of Bellevue, or I'm sure that City of Redmond, come talk to us, because we absolutely want want to create some experiences for you.
Can we get another round of applause for all of our speakers today? Thank you to Kevin, thank you Jerilee and Janice for taking the time out of your really busy day to come and speak to these people that are just getting into this STEM robotics learning sector. But now we're gonna jump into our breakout rooms. Thank you so much, everyone, once again.
All right. Like we mentioned earlier, we have some amazing breakout rooms. We have our CAD mechanical breakout room in the Cedar building. That's like towards the left side. Our introduction to computer vision will be right here. And then our alumni success stories will be towards where you just got in. It'll be in the Maple breakout room. So you have a 10-minute break and we'll see you soon.